Hey everyone, this is One Man Zerg with the UEN.com giving you some tips today on siege tanks and their ability to push on a tank, kind of a leapfrog based attack, as well as inverse ledging and using their range to cover one another. So let's watch what happens right now. This Terran player is about to push in on this Zerg player's base, and you can see that his tanks are sieging up here. Plenty of range to stay out of range of this spine crawler, and also making those roaches unable to push out fully on them because he has troops here. Some other creative things that this player is doing that I want to point out are he's bringing SCVs along with him. Now the SCVs, kind of like a medevac, work to extend the life of your units because they can repair these Hellions and they can repair these siege tanks as a battle's going on. Now you see these tanks dealt with that threat of the spine crawler down here and push those roaches back, so the Terran player is going to be able to move in to his opponent's base a little more, and then as soon as the tanks get within range of the hatchery or any more defensive objects or units, he's going to quickly siege them again, and once again have these troops in between the enemy's units and his tanks so that he has a buffer zone. So these tanks are sieging up, and then you can see they're able to pound down on this hatchery, and his opponent has to keep building his troops to try and counterattack these tanks, but these tanks are just really keeping that maximum range and keeping this buffer zone so that they can take out the opponent. Now he can move in his troops because you can see his troops are range 6 and range 5 for the Hellions and the Marines, and that's longer range than the range 3 roaches, so he's really leveraging that range advantage. So once again he pushes his enemy troops back into their base, and then now what he's doing right here, I want to point out, is this is what we like to call a little leapfrog trip. He brought in some reinforcements. That's another good thing to know. You want to keep bringing in reinforcements because your opponent's going to keep building reinforcements. And then with the new tank, he's moving it up here and sieging it. And as it's sieged, and he's going to gain that advantage from those siege tanks, he's going to move these other siege tanks that really they wouldn't be able to do much damage here. They wouldn't be able to impact the battle. He's going to move them up. So that's a leapfrog, moving some tanks up, and then from the back while the front tanks can cover that move up, and then moving those back tanks up again, and keeping this strong buffer zone in between his tanks and the enemy's units. So let's see what he's going to do from here. He's probably going to bring these up the ramp so he can get a little vision on his enemy. It's really important that you have that vision up here, because if you don't have the vision, you can see these tanks can't attack up here right now. So he's going to have to bring his troops up here so he has vision again, and then he's going to bring his tanks down here at the bottom of the ledge. And this is something I like to call inverse ledging, because usually what you want to do is you want to use the ledge on the top of the ledge so your opponent can't see you and so that they can't get to you as easily. But when you have tanks and then you have vision up on the ledge, you can do this really cool thing which I call inverse ledging, and that's using these tanks on the bottom, which you can see he has a range out here, and then we're going to play it a little more for these tanks to get sieged. And you can see these tanks now are leveraging this ledge, so the roaches couldn't hit them if they got pushed, if the roaches got to get to this ledge, while the tanks can hit them. So they're forcing the roaches to go down the ramp to hit them, just as the roaches in another situation would have to go up the ramp to hit them. So using this 13 range that the tanks have, they can really use the bottom of the ledge just as effectively as they can use the top of the ledge. And let's see what happens. Now these tanks are all set up, and you can see their fire zones, so that if someone gets this top of the ledge where they could push out, they're well defended and they back each other up. That's very important that your tanks are all able to back each other up based on the troops the opponent has. And then you can see again, something comes in from the back, Czech's troops come in from the back, and the tanks are going to once again cover each other. And you can see this is just too powerful sometimes for the opponent to deal with, so he gets that good game. Now some other things to think about here are, if your opponent had longer range troops, you might have to keep your siege tanks a little tighter together, because this siege tank out here, if he was attacking with Hydralisk might be able to attack from out here, so these back two siege tanks aren't going to be able to do anything. But if this siege tank were up here, then they would be able to reach the Hydralisk that would have to come to here to attack them. So if your opponent has longer range troops, you got to keep your siege tanks a little tighter together, as well as you got to keep your troops tighter with your siege tanks. That's very important to do. So few things I want to reiterate. You want to bring your SCV in to repair your units, kind of like having a medevac for armored units, so you can fight longer and you can keep pushing. You want to bring reinforcements in as you're pushing. That's very vital to remember. You can set the rally point on your unit that's fighting, or you can set the rally point you know, somewhere around here where it's relatively safe for the units to arrive there while you're pushing. And then lastly, you want to use these ledges as best you can, whether you're on top or on bottom with your siege tanks, because that 13 range they have is just very impressive. And then bundle them so they can cover each other's butts and keep the other units close so they have the buffer in between your opponent's units and your siege tanks, which are really going to do that massive area effect damage. I hope that tip works well for you. You can go to theuen.com or subscribe to our YouTube channel, the UEN TV, for more tips and tricks like this if you like them. Thanks for listening.